Hello everybody, this is Mrs. Ellsworth. I want to talk about the flipped classroom teaching method just for a couple of moments here. I want to tell you that I was searching for ideas to help my students build a stronger understanding of what the content is really about, not just little specifics that would help them do well on a test or even not do well on tests, but help them make a true connection or understanding of what the content is. And we would go and spend all this time and money on these labs, and students weren't making connections from the content we were learning to the labs. And so I was searching for a method that would help with making that connection. And so from some of the articles I was reading, it really inspired me to really check into the flipped classroom teaching method. Okay, normally we sit there and we listen to lectures in school, and then we go home and we do the homework. Sometimes when you're doing the homework, it seems a little more difficult than what the teacher was showing in class, so it becomes difficult, and then what do? You call a friend, or else you come in early to school to talk to a friend, or else talk to your teacher. And so I was trying to eliminate part of that problem with this flipped method. Instead, you would listen to the lectures online at home, and then you do activities to help you understand the material better, and that there were higher level activities that would help you understand the material. So I went and did some research, and I found some things that did work and some things that didn't work in my research so I could build my experiment on my students. I found that when we did formative assessments or little quizzes that students did much better. I found that when we did active labs or active activities, students did much better. And also students tended to enjoy the engagement that technology produced. And I was looking forward to anything that would help turn on students to my chemistries and my physical science and my physics courses. What I found that didn't work is when you go and you just switch time for time. You switch lab time with lecture time or lab time with homework time, and you just switch time for time, that didn't improve academic success much at all. So I decided that the lower level thinking, the Bloom's taxonomy, is a very common way that teachers use to describe students' understanding of material. And so these lower level things here is like when I give you information through a lecture. So if you do that lower understanding stuff in home, then we can apply it and we can use that information to create something much more incredible and to help us understand the information better. So the flipped classroom was helping me because now students would be doing this at home instead of this at home. It would flip it around. So I did an action research project where I had to develop a hypothesis where I only changed one variable, okay, as whether it was a flipped classroom or a traditional lecture classroom. But I did do two different variables that I measured. I checked for off-task behaviors, and I also checked for their achievement scores. Then I had to do a procedure. One of the tests that I did was the density test, which had 5 videos. Okay, another one was a science skills unit where it had 3 videos for lecture, and then the other one had just 1, the states of matter unit. And I want to tell you that first of all, the behaviors that were in there, I didn't have enough significant results on that to report anything, but I did find, though, that it did increase academic scores. In fact, I found that the more videos that there were, the higher that the scores went. So how did it affect the academic scores? Well, first of all, I knew the grades of all my students who were in the flipped classroom. I knew that because we were constantly working on assessments where I could check and see where my students were all the time. So that was great. Also, the amount of video time that they had for each unit meant that they had a higher academic success. Let me show you. In the density unit, they had a 13% increase in their grades from one class. This is the traditional lecture is in the blue, and the green is when they did the flipped classroom. So the scores went up 13%. Now in the science skills class, they had a 17% increase. that's two whole grades difference. And then in the states of matter, it only had one video, and there wasn't very much difference at all. All the activities that we did in class, I did with both sides, and I even did one more additional study on the atomic theory, but I didn't have to report that one for my action research project because I ran out of time. I just did it for additions, and that was a 9% difference. So the flipped classroom did affect academic success. I knew about all the grades of my students, and also the amount of video time showed a higher test scores. Okay, one thing that I know that I will do, and I really appreciate how this project helped me develop in this way, but also I learned that the discussions that we had in class, that they didn't affect everybody. I usually had conversations with the most outgoing student or students. Gifted and talented students sometimes are either quiet and then they didn't pay attention much and then their minds would wander. Same with students who had difficulty understanding it. And also lots of people didn't have the courage to ask questions. Those are some of the things that students talked about why they didn't like lectures after the whole study was done. Also, lectures with really large classes, I found that chatty students ruined it and that they made the lectures about 2-3 times longer than usual. So I plan to use a flipped classroom for lab procedures. I want to keep my videos very short. I would love it if they would be between 5 and 10 minutes. But it takes time to develop all this, and I'm in the course of building all these now. And I will also use other teachers who post very good videos about the same content. So again, what I wanted to do is I wanted to help my students have a stronger understanding of the material I was teaching. I also wanted to help them make connections to real-world labs so that they could understand what was happening microscopically, or so they could understand the certain energies that were involved. I found that this experiment that I ran on my students was very encouraging for finding ways to help my students have a stronger understanding of their science. I'll see you tomorrow.